You get some schools that use a lovely approach to supporting autistic children to access school initially. So maybe if you have a child who's nervous about attending, they can go in just for a little bit. They can go in and meet key members of staff. They can access their education in a particular room so that they're not having to deal with the multiple transitions that children encounter in secondary school. And schools that are good at supporting neurodivergent children to attend will offer strategies like that, and they'll have that gradual stepped introduction to school. They'll be focusing on relationships and supporting that child's autonomy as they access the curriculum. That's fabulous. The problem comes when schools use similar strategies to address burnout. And when children are not attending because they're worried about attending, that's very different from when they're not attending because they're burnt out. When someone's burnt out, they get stuck in a stress response. They don't feel safe. They don't feel safe at school, and they don't feel safe, and they're stuck not feeling safe. And interventions which force attendance, even very minimal attendance to do your favourite lesson, can exacerbate burnout. And trauma can be triggered by things that are associated with school because the burnout occurred at school. So things like sending work home or mentioning school can sustain burnout. And what people need is generally just a long period of time doing nothing, just waiting for that stress response to go away. Sometimes you'll see people gaming or watching TV, quite often watching or playing games that are younger than their perceived level. And after a prolonged period, and we're talking, months, then you might see people feeling a bit safer. And then you would look for signs of engagement or curiosity, or maybe they vary the TV programs that they watch. Maybe they express an interest in doing some cooking, going outside, something else. And it's generally not things that are school related. And whatever they show an interest in, you would fuel that. You want to go outside? Let's go outside. You want to do some cooking? What ingredients do you need? And you're building capacity in areas that they're able to engage with. And then you could start saying, how about school? But actually, I would look at inspiring intrinsic motivation. So maybe you start daydreaming about what's your future going to be? What do you want? You want to do costumes for the West End? Well, maybe it would be useful to you to have English literature as one of your qualifications, and how would you get that? And then they'll be like, I want an English exam because that gets me to that place. And if you can run on intrinsic motivation, that will take you far further than extrinsic motivation. And then the final thing is, if they are ready to go back, quite often it's really hard to go back to the setting you burnt out in. So it might be that an alternative provision is better, or it could just be that a different provision that's the same sort of thing that they left is more accessible, because returning to a space of burnout is hugely difficult.